Aster Mengesha Gubay, and I'm a child of the diaspora. In July of 1991, my parents came to the United States from Ethiopia, and exactly 3 months later, I was born. I have 4 brothers. My older brother lives in Ethiopia, and my 3 younger brothers live in Lynchburg, Virginia, where I was born and they were born. Currently, I am a graduate student at George Mason University studying public policy, and my specialty and focus is immigration policy. I'm very interested in working with my people, African diaspora, and immigrants in general. So seeing as how the studies would launch me into that, I eagerly took every opportunity possible, and that was how I was able to get to the Office on African Affairs. Growing up, I learned a lot of my culture and history through my father. He would always sit us, my brothers and I, down and tell us everything, even if it was the same story over and over and over. But those were some of the things that I have cherished and I keep to this day, and it's something that has definitely molded my identity. Growing up, my father tried his hardest to teach me Amharic, which is the native language of Ethiopia, or the national language of Ethiopia. And being in Lynchburg, Virginia, where there were no Africans, literally a population of 5, and that was my family, I pushed back. It was hard. It was really tough for me to even want to sit there and understand another language when none of my peers, none of the students, none of the kids I played with on the playground were speaking that language. So looking back now, I wish I had kind of obviously held on to it tighter, but I am glad that I do have the knowledge of the language now. But for my brothers, I know it's something that they are going through the same cycle, but having me as an older sister, they are learning that it is important to have your native tongue. It is something that you will hold for the rest of your life to communicate with your elders, with other immigrants, and develop your identity in a whole. I think one of the major challenges I had as a child was probably actually was my name, Aster. People came up with Ashley, Astrid, everything but Aster. And it was really hard for me as a child because obviously kids, we can be evil sometimes, have a tendency to come up with strange things. So I went through a period where people were saying the weirdest names for me, but I think that made me tougher. And I'm so thankful my parents were able to name me an Ethiopian name, and that's something that I do cherish. Another thing that I think growing up was a little hard for me was possibly the language barrier with my parents at a younger age. Seeing my parents have to go through some of the things they went through, I know that it was not easy, but it was definitely a sign of how strong their characters are. And I'm very glad that we were able to get through some of the younger years of my life. So. I do believe my education was heavily influenced by my culture. In 2009, I went to Ethiopia, and that was when I graduated high school. I was only 17 years old. I stayed in several parts of Ethiopia with my mom for about 2 to 3 months. And that was an eye-opening experience, being at 17, just leaving high school, knowing that college was the next step. And honestly, going into college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to study. But leaving Ethiopia, coming back, and starting at Lynchburg College as a freshman, I knew immediately I was interested in international relations, foreign affairs, something that would get me involved with the continent in any type of way. So going to Lynchburg College, I had the opportunity to finish within 3 years, and I was able to explore my interest in Africa through amazing faculty and staff. And once I left, once I graduated and had a little bit of working experience in between transitioning from undergrad to graduate school, I realized that graduate school is where I need it to be, so I can work on the policy side so that I can really connect with the diaspora, people who need the help the most. And that was probably all, actually I can confirm that it was all influenced by seeing how my parents, how much they need the access to resources, how much that was helped by policies at the local level, and seeing how immigrants, not just African immigrants in Lynchburg, had access to different organizations, to facilities that would help them integrate into the community. And that was something that I became extremely passionate about. And I realized that through policy work, that would be the way that I could change or help grow or fix some of the things that I see as not right. And I'm very thankful for a lot of how I grew up, the things that I went through to have influenced why I explored policy. And I think one of the other things, growing up in Lynchburg, Virginia, where again, there wasn't a lot of African immigrants or immigrants in general, that I think molded me. A lot of people in the Northern Virginia area, there's a huge community. You're constantly around your people or the same type of people, so you, not saying that you don't have the opportunity to think outside the box or figure out how to connect with your culture or connect with other cultures, but for me, being in Lynchburg, Virginia, it was an opportunity to, one, connect with my culture through my parents, and then two, figure out how to navigate all of these other networks. And I feel like that's something that's aided me so much and has been beneficial for my career, or future career. In 2009, when I went to Ethiopia, we started in Mekelle, where my mom, her side of the family is from, which is a different ethnic group within Ethiopia from my father's side, and they speak Tigrinya. So when I was there, I was constantly being bombarded with Tigrinya left and right, left and right. And for me, growing up in a home that only spoke Amharic, which is my father's language, it was tough for me. The first 2 weeks, I wanted to leave. I was like, get me out of here, get me out of here. I want to go home. I don't want to be here. People are looking at me funny. They're making jokes. In reality, they're just trying to connect with me. And the only person that really smoothed that situation over for me was my grandmother. She really helped me out a lot in the transition, and it was an amazing first month. From there, I went to different areas. I went to Wollo, where my father is from, and then we stayed there for a couple of weeks, and then we also went to Addis Ababa. Addis Ababa was the very end, and honestly, it was the shortest part of the trip, but one thing I can say was that really resonated with me were the smells of the country. Some of them great, some of them not too great, but those are things that I feel like are sensory, and they just stay with you whenever you go into a local market here in the United States that reminds you something from there. So that's something that I brought back over, constantly connecting with that. The sounds, the constant movement, the hospitality of the country is ridiculous. It's amazing how much people will open up their heart to you, and all they know you through is through a phone call or through Skype. And sometimes I get emotional talking about it because it's my whole side of my family's there. So I'm very thankful that I was able to have my cousins there who helped with the transition, because they wanted to learn English, obviously, so they're in my face all the time, which was great because it was basically we were going back and forth. I would learn some of this stuff, they would learn some of my things, and when I say I was forever changed from that experience, I was forever changed. And I'm so thankful because I know a lot of people are unable to go. So I'm very, very thankful that my parents were able to make that decision once I graduated high school. One of the things I noticed my parents didn't have the advantage of was community. Community plays a huge role in how you develop, how you learn your culture, how you have access to material, and I see that in this area. So I'm interested in creating a network for those who do not live in Northern Virginia, who do not live in the DC or in Atlanta or Houston, or where there are huge hubs of the diaspora. I want to make sure that those people who are in these, not remote, because it's not remote, but in the areas that are in Southern Virginia or somewhere out in California, wherever they are, that they have some type of way or platform to connect with one another. It's very crucial that they have these tools for integration so that they can bring up their children once they come to the United States, or have access to just basic healthcare or any other things that they normally wouldn't have the access to, all because of a language barrier or not being able to understand where to go. That's the biggest thing that I think for my parents, was understanding where to go. Fortunately for them, my mom was quick and savvy, so she could learn the English language like that, and she barely has an accent now. So for her, it was easy for her to grasp on. For my dad, it was a little bit harder, but I think it was, that for them was definitely a big deal as far as having a community, not being present. So I think that would be my biggest focus as far as policy. I think you can have a platform. I know one of the biggest things for me growing up was the internet. That's how my father was able to almost legitimize the culture for me, because he would be sitting there constantly talking to me. We would be listening to old cassette tapes, and I'm like, Dad, can we move with the times? And then finally with YouTube and seeing all these videos of people at Skista and like dancing and having all these different events and news stations and all of just different outlets, that for me at a younger age kind of legitimized some things for me. Because you're hearing it from your adult, you're just kind of like, okay, I got it. But then you see it, and then you see kids who look like you, and that through the internet was a major thing for me. So I think you can in a vacuum, as long as there are different platforms, making sure that local government have just immigrant awareness activities that are in different areas. Because while there wasn't a huge African population in Lynchburg, there's a huge Korean population, huge Latino Hispanic community. There was a huge Asian community in general. So that just bringing immigrants together who have the same story of being from another country, coming here, not having direct access, I think that alone could be a way for people to connect. I think social media has connected me with people that I thought I'd never be connected to in my life. A lot of diaspora networks that are online, a lot of blogs, a lot of websites, meetups, tweet-ups, all of different things on Twitter. Like, these are opportunities for you to meet people who look like you but may not have grew up with you, but an opportunity to grow with them now. And I think that social media definitely propels, or it gives my generation and the generations after, an opportunity to connect. Whether it be someone from a different side of Africa, a different side of the world, wherever you're able to connect with them. And I also think that one of the things I do want to say is that our community here, especially the Ethiopian community, is extremely tight-knit. So even if social media wasn't present, I think that there would still be opportunities for people to grow and to connect with people just from networks from back home to here. But I do believe that social media has been a huge outlet for, especially for women of the diaspora. It's a great way to connect with other like-minded women who are studying what you're studying, who are interested in what you're interested in, and would like to open you up to you like a sister. So I think that social media, huge kudos to all those people who created it. So.